Hello, listeners, and welcome back to another episode of Two and a Half Therapists, starring myself, Alex Coton. I'm a game developer and new father, and we have Simon.
Yep, I'm Simon. I'm a professional counselor, and I'm also a bit of a gamer and interested in a lot of fictional stories.
And Gorgon.
So Gorgon, also known as gamer.counsellor on the social media, and I'm a professional counselor in New Zealand.
So that's the Two and a Half Counselors. And today we're going to be talking about the concept of fatigue-ness or burnout, which you might find a topical issue at the moment, seeing as we're still in a long-lasting lockdown here in New Zealand. Without further ado, I'll hand over to our host for today's episode, Gorgon.
Yes, fatigueness and burnout. How are we feeling that at the moment in terms of the lockdown?
Okay, I can go. I think that's a appropriate, topic to discuss because, I mean, it is sort of what we're sort of going through at the moment. But yeah, I can definitely see in my life that fatigueness creeping in, and the burnout and sort of. Do you want me to give a bit of a definition of what burnout and fatigueness is?
Go ahead. Go
So we're on
ahead.
the sort of same page.
Yeah.
Um, so they're similar but different. So as for burnout, I think Psychology Today stated like it was a state of emotional and mental and often physical exhaustion brought upon prolonged and repeated stress. And some people also call it compassionate fatigue. So a lot of it is connected at the workplace, but it doesn't solely just appear in the work environment. It can appear in everyday life as well. And as for fatigue, that's more on the lines of extreme tiredness. So and that resulted in mental and physical exertion, and that will follow you for some time as well. So I just put out a bit of definition, and I think as for me, it'd be more mental and emotional fatigueness, and then I'm so slowly noticing the more of the physical because of the lack of exercise, because of the lack of engagement with others and so forth. So I just don't have that drive, that push as I would every day if I had to go to work. I'm quite an introverted person, but to be in lockdown for what would be coming up to 2 months, would that be right? Be coming up to
Yeah,
Y-
easily. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it's about 9 weeks now.
yeah.
Mm.
So and especially in New Zealand, it's quite a heavy lockdown. So majority of that time you couldn't really go out unless it's exercise. So I've started to notice, at least for me at the moment, even it takes a lot of energy to connect even with my friends, with others, more than it ever used to.
Mm.
So, and just wanting to get back to normal, but not having the power to change anything. So just sitting in it. Yeah.
Mm. Mm. It sounds very very energy draining as well, even though we're at home doing nothing per se.
Mm.
Mm.
I find actually sitting down and like you did before, quotation marks, doing nothing, actually quite lethargic and actually is does take away a lot of energy because you're not exercising, you're not getting any energy in you.
Mm.
This is, yeah.
Yeah, we're definitely gonna dive deep into the deep end of what causes fatigue, exhaustion.
Mm.
Yeah, but what about you, Alex? Considering that you are a new father as well in this whole lockdown situation.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what's the question? Do you want me to tell you where I've experienced fatigue and burnout
Well, how are you feeling in terms of your energy level in
right now?
right
Yeah.
now, according to COVID?
Yeah, I definitely. We had our child just over 10 days ago, and so we're just getting through the phase of what's called cluster feeding. So that's when your baby feeds like every 5 minutes during the
Okay.
night, and therefore you don't
Wow.
sleep. So that's very interesting. I'm definitely feeling lacking in sleep, and and we can. But the thing is, we can make up for that during the day because we're both not working at the moment, so that's not too bad. But in general, with the lockdown, where I'm feeling fatigue is around screens, because screens are predominantly the way that I'm socializing recently. So, I'm chatting to you two on video at the moment, but also like I'm playing games with friends and we're chatting to each other on video at the same time. And I'm just finding that for me lacks the kind of juice that being there together would in the real world. And it does somehow actually drain my energy as well, rather than add to it. Usually when I socialize, I usually take energy. But I'm finding over computers it's a bit more draining after a couple of hours, after an hour or hour or two.
Oh, that's interesting. Let's unpack that right now. Not to be honest, for Alex, but what seems to be the difference to you?
I suspect, and I've read a little bit about it, I suspect it's to do with focus. I think that when I'm in a room, or when I'm in the presence of someone in the real world, my whole body is aware of and sensing their being and their responses to me, and we reflect each other, and we have mirror neurons fire, and we laugh or we empathize together, whatever. When I'm talking to people on Zoom, I find it's much more easy to get distracted and look elsewhere. So I have to be very careful personally about like making sure I've got other windows closed for a start. I've actually got a couple open now, which I don't need, so I'm gonna close those. So that's that you can see already. Like I'm having to focus just to be in presence with you. And in general, I find that because the thing I was just talking about, that I don't have all this kind of real world data to be aware of through a video call. It's harder. It's just basically harder for me to kind of pick up things and really understand and empathize and all that sort of stuff. So I think it's just a thing of focus for me, to be honest.
And connection. Like there's that sort of unspoken, and I don't know the science too much behind this, but when that actually people are in the same room with each other, you're connecting with them. It's not just the data or the information, it's that sort of unseen sort of connection as well. And
yeah, you're right. There's a kind of a spiritual element to it as well that's missing on video. Some of it is.
That's true. This it's lacking a lot of different dimension, kind of energy, and I kind of get what you just said there, Alex, in terms of you need to put more energy into focusing.
I think so.
Yeah.
No. And Gorgon. I'll give it back to you.
Well, thank you. Throw it back to me. But before that, I just need to say this. Compassion fatigue can be different from burnout. Well, according to Psychology Today as well, is compassion fatigue is a condition in which someone becomes numb to suffering of others. Feel less able to display empathy towards them, or loses hope in their ability to help. So it can, a lot of time is in conjunction or using it kind of in conjunction with burnout, but also there's another element to it that is more towards feeling, hence compassion. I think I myself is feeling that. That's why I bring it up, the compassion fatigue at the moment. Because the things during lockdown, we still have to work the counselors, and the last bit, the hope in their ability to help, that really drains a lot. So in terms of the COVID lockdown situation right now, I am feeling a little bit tired, and actually these few days I've got to get out from my home because I have to do my car maintenance and whatnot. I can really feel that the physical exhaustion is there as well. Reintroduced to the outside stimulus after being locked down in home for so long. So that's generally how I'm feeling right now. But still okay.
And you would associate that with more compassion fatigue, is that right?
Kind of both way. I mean, compassion fatigue in terms of my work, in relation to my work, because and going out, it's more of a physical kind of tiredness. So it drains more energy from me after being stuck at home for so long.
But yet you still try to do the physical exercise, even though it drains more? How come? Why is that?
Oh,
So, like, even though it drains a lot of energy, you still choose to do the physical exercise?
well, not today. But I did went out because I need to do my car maintenance. That's why I went out, and that drains my physical energy.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
do you say, like, more maintenance?
Car
So
maintenance, my car.
Okay.
Yeah. I need to do WOF, Warrant of Fitness. In New Zealand, we need to have the annual test, and I failed the tire test, so I have to change for my tire. But that's another sad story personally.
Wait. So you're
Because of
saying that you
burnout.
changed 4 tires manually?
No, I have to pay money to change all my
okay.
yeah.
Then
No, not
financial
manually.
fatigue.
Yeah, financial fatigue. Yes.
And I think this links perfectly into burnout, because if you do change 4 tires, that means you must be burning out. Like, they must be using the car to do some donuts or something.
Talking about burnout, I also had a fright yesterday because I have 2 cars. The other car has a puncture. So luckily that the person at the workshop tell me is just it's not a big deal. I don't have to change the whole tire. So instead of 5, I'm changing 4. So that's a plus. But that is a burnout in my wallet.
Yeah, I was just going with more that you can make that sort of analogy of, another understanding of burnout is people doing skids in a car. And if
That's
you keep
true.
doing that, it's going to burn out the tires.
But okay.
Yeah. So it's just being playful with that, I guess.
You're definitely gonna burn out. You're gonna burn out your petrol as well. Your tires.
Yeah.
Who's got money for burnouts these days? We can't afford to be floozing our fuel away that way.
I don't think they would think too much into the future. It'd be more in the now.
Well, most of them. But anyway. So that is how we experience the COVID kind of tiredness, fatigue at the moment. But let's move away from the real world and come back to and look at fictional world. Where do you guys where could you guys see fatigue, exhaustions, or kind of burnout kind of analogy being used in fictional world?
Yeah, I'll kick that one off. So in movies, I quite often like these revenge type movies.
Revenge type.
Denzel Washington has a great one. Was it Man on Fire? I think that's a redo, isn't it, of an earlier film? I often see in those movies, Taken is another one, obviously with Liam Neeson. You often see at some point where the protagonist, so to speak, comes up against a wall. He's either kind of met his match and the people he's seeking revenge on, or he falls to his addiction. And I think in Man on Fire, he falls to his alcoholism. I like that as a turning point in films. I can relate to that as well from my own experience of addiction. That often we need to be dropped to our knees to really be able to get up and move in the right direction. So that's what I'll add. Yeah.
So they get to the point of like they need to do something or else because they're rock bottom basically.
Yeah, rock bottomed. Yeah, essentially. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think in Man on Fire, he has this. Yeah, that's right. He has this little diary with a bullet in it, and the bullet is symbolic because he tried to take his own life at one point, but the bullet misfired. So he keeps the bullet as a reminder that he's been there. He's been to rock bottom before. So yeah, I kind of like that symbolism.
So he's got a bit of like a memento, bit of artifact to keep him reminded.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's good. My one's a bit different, but I was thinking more of the heroic fatigue trope, and I think I mentioned this not too long ago. So I'll explain that. That's basically an example of this is in a fictional world. Say the hero wants to go around and save everyone, or the hero or the character, whatever it might be, a video game or the anime or movie, and they're running around basically doing everything they can to save every damsel in distress, every criminal they see in the alley and all so forth. And if you played a bit of video games, you see in a role-playing game or something, there'd be like a myriad amount kind of quests to do, and there'd be some games is an infinite amount of quests to do. So that I see that in definitely a lot of fictional stories as well as games. And this reminds me of actually when I played Spider-Man, the video game. And I love probably one of my favorite characters was growing up as Spider-Man. So when I got to play Spider-Man, when I got to be Spider-Man in this video game, I wanted to fight all the bad guys, every bad guy I know of, and every criminal, You sort of put yourself in those shoes and say, okay, but because the game wants to give you as many missions as possible, almost every corner in the city or Manhattan, there was some kind of crime. There's some kind of activity. So I can see. So I would spend literally the whole day doing side quests, which is nothing to do with the original quest. What I actually wanted to do, because in order to get there, I saw these people in distress, and I'll just go round and round in circles. So that's sort of like the heroic sort of fatigue trope, is that they keep doing it until they hit rock bottom, bit like what Alex said, but differently. And they can't say no, they can't reject anyone in danger, but because of that, they haven't prioritized. And luckily, in this game, it's not an issue, but if there was time was a factor, then that person originally you're supposed to save would have maybe perished or so. But the Spider-Man or Peter Parker, sort of reminded even me of the actual character, that he wants to go out and save everyone, and that sort of maybe gets you to reflect on priority, like what's important and where's that sort of where should I put the energy towards. But yeah, I see a lot of fictional stories in video games is that you want to be that hero, but if you don't prioritize, you don't choose, you eventually will drop everything. You won't be able to help at all.
Wow, that's a very good point there. That the last bit that you mentioned, Simon, that you need to watch yourself. If not, you won't be able to help other people too. As I'm listening to you sharing that story, it really reminds me of the recent anime that I watched, My Hero Academia. It's this main character, one of the main character. His name is All Might, or in Japanese they call it All Mighto. He's this superhero, the symbol of hope, the symbol of security, but because of in the past where he was beaten up really bad and he still wanted to go and save people, and ended up with a very big hole in his stomach. So because of that injury, he cannot maintain his muscle form. So there's a time limit to how long he can do that. And I won't spoil much, but in season 1, this specific episode, because he cannot help, like what you say, Simon, he cannot help but to help people. Because when he hears someone say, "Oh, help me, my bag's being snatched," and then he would just go and help those victims. And a result of it, he wasn't able to maintain a muscle form when he really needed to fight a villain. So it kind of reflect that a little bit as well. It's quite consistent there. Yeah. Any thoughts, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, I can certainly relate to the the rescuer theme that you guys have touched on. When I was practicing as a therapist for a year, I did really struggle to balance my personal life with my work life and the energy I needed. I'd really taken on too much, to be honest. And yeah, what did you want to say there, Colgan?
No, yeah, I'm just curious. How
So where
much?
Simon's gone.
Yeah,
Okay, cool.
we'll wait for him to return. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just curious. Like, how much was too much for you? If you don't mind sharing a little bit about that.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was working 4 days a week as a game developer, which is pretty intense, focused work anyway. And then I was seeing 3 clients a week, doing supervision once a fortnight, and going to school for psychotherapy school for one day a week. So there's a lot of hours, and really it all added up to be way over my head basically.
Okay.
I actually really enjoyed the therapy work. I really got a lot out of that, and I was so grateful to be invited into people's personal worlds to help them forward. Yeah, but the whole thing was just too much at the time. So, and that was because I was wanting to change career, but also I had this rescuer tendency of wanting to help as many people as I can, and not being so great at doing my own self-care, which was in the end was a symptom of my lack of self-love at the time. So yeah, that was a good learning phase of my life.
Yeah. I was just want to say there's a bigger lesson to learn.
Yeah, it was. I learned it well. Yeah.
That's the thing about lesson. It's all about what we do next. Eh? Welcome back, Simon.
Yeah,
Thank you. Yeah, I missed a bit of the first part, but I got the end part, so that's the main part, the lesson.
Yeah.
So it really sounds like tiredness, fatigueness, and burnout has got to do with the whole resource or energy management. And I do think that in game, tell me what you guys think. Using the whole HP bar and mana bar, it's an accurate. Well, maybe accurate is not the word, but it's relatable. It makes it we can externalize the whole concept of fatigueness. At least for me, anyway. What do you guys think? Yeah,
I'd say that's a good analogy. The health bar and the mana bar, I think you said. That when you need to take care of yourself, so when you need to give yourself rest, for example, that also assumes a certain level of self-awareness. So in order to be able to track your own health bar, so to speak, or your own energy levels, you need to be really aware of I guess your own limitations, your own sense of your own embodied sense, and really listening to that. Like for example, I used to do all those things I just mentioned before, studying, working, seeing clients, seeing supervisors, and then on top of that I'd be like, oh, I want to go dancing twice this week. So I kind of didn't listen. My body obviously was telling me, you're wrecked, you need to sleep. And I was like, no, I want to live and enjoy my life. So I really went against my body, and that's what I'm getting at, is to be not just self-aware, but also listening to yourself.
Yeah, I like that. It's listen to yourself, because some people I work with, they can work at a high pace scale. They can do 20 things in that week. But if that's abnormal for you, and that's all of a sudden, maybe you need to listen to your body and say, hang on a minute, is this sustainable? Can I sustain this? And you're completely right there, Alex, is that you listen, and that self-awareness is the first step, I would say, if helping yourself, if there's potential burnout or potential fatigueness, because a lot of times it creeps up on you, and then next thing you know, it just hits you like a ton of bricks.
Yeah, and
You
over a
don't
long
know.
period of time, I think. I think you can be thinking you're okay for years and years before it really hits you that you've actually maybe done some damage. You've not looked after yourself. Yeah. Yep.
I think that's very common to a lot of us, that it creeps up on you. And the analogy that I get, or that I can think of, is boiling the frog. Because a lot of time this fatigueness, it doesn't just comes in one sudden drain. Well, sometimes it does, but a lot of time it's a build up kind of situation. But before we move on the topic, what do you think is the barrier to people's self-awareness to the tiredness? Because I think it might be important for our listener as well, to really think about what could be the barrier or the challenges for us to actually realize or say to ourselves that, hey, I'm actually tired.
Yeah. I think I need to think on that one. Simon, have you got some thoughts there before I answer?
I mean, it'd be quite contextual on each person. So, is that, do you have time to actually stop and think and be present and be mindful, and listen to yourself, or are you too busy, or you don't actually be physically busy? It could be mentally busy, that you're not actually paying attention to what's happening around you in your social circles. So the self-awareness, I would say, would be look at your schedule, look at your routines, and are you putting that time into that reflection? Because that's a big part of, I would say, building self-awareness, is having that reflection time, at least for me. So once that you can do that reflection in a non-judgmental space, so you're not just putting yourself down. Then you can sort of come up and bring that self-awareness. Oh, okay, maybe this isn't something I can keep going, or maybe because it's contextual for each person, but that person would know, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay.
But you have to spend that. It will be like training. So if you're playing football, and if you train once a month or once every couple months, don't expect yourself to be that great of a football player compared to if you train once a week or a couple times a week. So you sort of have to see that time, or even that reflective time, as some kind of training.
Yeah. So let me know if this is a good I guess analogy or accurate feedback of what you have just said, Simon. That recently I played Pokemon Unite, so it's kind of like a game. Well, let's not go into details of it, but that's HP bar, and you have to fight the enemy. And what you are saying there, Simon, is sometimes while we are engaging with the enemy, we need to remind ourselves to be mindful about our HP, to really look at, okay, in a very simplest form, how much HP have I left now? Do I want to engage with the enemy right now?
Yeah, or it doesn't have to be enemy. It could be engaging.
Yeah.
In general, do I need to have a bit of a break right now? Do I need to maybe upskill myself? Do I need to look at some areas? If I go with this, what you do of Pokemon, do I need to stop fighting these monsters or Pokemon and look for areas to upgrade my HP levels? So maybe it's out of 10 and might need to upgrade it to 12, if that makes sense. And so that self-awareness would add to that HP, because now you're self-aware, and self-awareness will help across the board.
Yeah. Just be
direction
mindful
in life, and so forth.
Yeah.
So it would be like, okay, why am I keep engaging with this? This is sort of hitting a brick wall. Yeah.
Good one.
Yeah. Self-awareness, like you said, Simon, is it's really subjective. Obviously, every person has their own story and their journey to work out. And I think the question asked to me originally was, what sort of blocks my self-awareness or something like that.
Yeah, barrier to that. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And for me, actually, it was a blind spot. So by the time I did figure out that I was pushing myself past my limits, I had really tried everything. Like I'd had years of therapy by that point. I'd gone into all sorts of communities, and obviously dance was, I've mentioned already, was one of them, to experiment with myself and experiment with myself in different types of relationship. And in the end, it took a friend to really, who knew me well enough, to highlight the suggestion that, hey, you might want to look into addiction. You might have some sort of addiction. And that was the part that I'd been missing and searching for most of my adult life, wondering why my relationships worked out the way they did. And so his suggestion of that investigation, as well as a lot of my own hard work, obviously highlighted an area that I hadn't noticed before, or just I didn't understand. So I didn't have the language or the framework to understand what I was doing over and over again. So yeah, even though you can be self-aware and you can have a blind spot, that's the point. Yeah.
Sometimes it takes the third party for the education, the psychoeducation, and to a reminder, a nudge that this might be something that you would like to look into.
Thanks
and like
for
you
sharing.
mentioned, it would be someone you have to trust. It would take a lot of trust to really to absorb that. Especially if they're coming from a good heart, but it might be quite hard to absorb. It's like, oh, that's quite of a tough thing to hear.
Yeah. Even better when they're somewhat sort of one of your people, so to speak. Because I think when you have a therapist, you tend to do your best to choose someone who sort of, fits you. But sometimes they're older, or sometimes they're of the opposite sex, or whatever. And I think the person that can really often nudge you in the right direction is a friend, because friends are your people and know you so well. And they know the environments you live in, etc., etc.
And they would be more open to say it straight, not beat around the bush.
That's true.
Especially, so 100%. So I mentioned about reflective, and I totally agree with Alex about that third party, someone outside who can see the blind spots you're not so aware of. So developing and maintaining good relationships, friends, family, and partners, so you can have that third party to point things out, and not to get defensive, or try less as possible.
I think one of the, well, to me anyway, challenge me at any time. One way that we can move past the whole defensiveness things is we have done our work ourselves, like what Alex has mentioned, that you have definitely engaged in some sort of therapy yourself, and I can see that myself as well, that when I was younger, a lot of defensiveness comes in, and that comes from, at least I'm speaking for myself, it's coming from the insecurity part of it, and that itself is something that we might need to look into as well. What is blocking the whole self-awareness?
What if I'll give one back to you, Gorgon. What if you're self-aware, but you're still finding yourself doing the same things? You're still finding yourself getting further and further. Probably looks like I'll probably going to burn out. I'm aware that my schedule is not maintainable, but so what if you've got the awareness?
Well, I might not answer that first, but I've actually wanted to share that cultural upbringing plays a big role, because I can see it in a lot of my student, a lot of my client that I see as well, that the whole drive that for us to be, or for you to be a good, or for me to be a good daughter or son, I need to push on, and by pushing yourself means you are breaking your limit. So taking a break is not pushing. So that itself can be a block as well.
But there would be, I can imagine there'll be a balance, like because you still need to push yourself, but to what extent? And that once again, that's subjective.
Yes.
What we mentioned about, yeah.
Yeah, and like I said, a lot of time it really depends on the culture. I mean, coming from Malaysia, the mindset of taking a break is not, it's really not a thing. Even though going into work life, there's they say work life balance, but there's this underlying tone that if you leave at 6 p.m., which is what your contract said, people will look at you. People look at you and judge you, saying that what are you doing? Your boss is still there. How can you leave before your boss?
It's so interesting, isn't it? Because that is, like you say, that is ingrained in culture, because that's to nobody's benefit, is it?
No.
It is to nobody's benefit to work past your contracted hours. It only creates competition and leads people, like you were saying before, it leads most people to burnout. Some people obviously will actually thrive in working longer and longer hours, but not many.
No, that's there will always be a breaking point, and a lot of time, we learn it the hard way. So I would say that itself can be a challenge for some people. It's not that they don't want, but the thoughts, that we grew up in, saying that, hey, you better not rest. If you're resting, there are thousands of you coming up to take over your position, and that's scary.
Yeah, competitive.
Yeah.
So it's the environment. It's a lot of it. Is that I can't just have a rest because I could lose my job. And the sad thing is that if it's going to come out one way, one form or another, it's most likely going to come out at home, not in the work environment.
Yes. Yeah. But it's not all gloom and doomy, or doom and gloomy. But it's
Doom too.
Doom tree. but like what Alex said just now, and Simon, is the knowledge of, hey, we can't do this sustainably, and having the change in the mindset from a cultural perspective, it starts from there, slow but easy. So that's important.
Yeah, real important. Yeah.
And with that, I can imagine developing that grit, that grit. So I maybe don't have full control of my environment or the culture, but what can I do? What things can I take control of? It's maybe that grit, or acknowledging that grit you have of pushing through, and acknowledging yourself as, and that could even help you, even in to help countering the fatigue. So it might be exercise, and it's so easy to go for a run and just stop whenever you want because I'm tired, I'm out of breath. But it's that grit, that willpower, keep pushing through. No, I need to run to that checkpoint. It's a couple 100 meters, and then I can have a breath. It's that perseverance and acknowledging and sort of empowering yourself for that as well. Which is, yeah,
it's interesting that we're talking about the cultural sort of factors that lead to burnout as well, because the games industry is notorious for overworking and burnout, and there have been a lot of there's been a lot of pressure on the companies in the industry to change that culture finally. And luckily, when I worked in the games industry, in the last company I worked for, the culture was very much against what we call crunch, which is working overtime, long periods. But yeah, I observe, I'm very, very much against any form of crunch or overwork in the workplace for lots of reasons, and I observe it's always a cultural issue that needs to be talked about and brought to the surface, and leadership needs to change. And I also believe that when people are not working under such huge amounts of stress and lacking in energy, they're actually way more productive and creative anyway. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm not sure if you. I'm sure you have seen this. You know the curve bar where it shows that the stress and the time. No, stress and performance graph. The
I
classic.
don't think I probably haven't seen the one you're talking to, but I'm very
Is it?
familiar with it through my own experience. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. So in short, it's just a curve saying that so I forgot which is the x-axis and the y-axis. The bottom one
Yeah.
is the stress level, and
Yeah.
then the vertical one is the
Productivity.
time.
Okay.
Productivity, yeah, performance.
Performance. Yeah.
So low stress yields low performance because there's no motivation and whatnot. As stress go up, increases, the performance will increase. So that's an optimal performance level. Anything hit that optimal stress level, your performance would go down after that. So essentially what I understand from what you are explaining there, Alex, is that that's a limit. We cannot be total lax, but at the same time it need to be challenged enough to actually engage with the productivity performance
Yeah. Ideally,
Yes.
we're in flow. Yeah.
flow.
So,
Yes, that's a good concept. What
So-
is flow for those who don't know? So you mind explaining that?
Flow is the idea that if things are too easy, then you lose interest and stop. Well, for the games are a good example. If a game's too easy, you lose interest and stop playing. If games are too hard, then you get frustrated and stop playing. But if there's sort of a happy median point between those too hard and too easy, and your experience of oscillates around that median point by a smaller amount, then you have a great time. And it's called flow.
So game developers need to have more flow so they can develop flow in gaming, so the players can develop.
Flow, yeah.
Yeah.
Flowception.
Definitely coding can be a really flow state, that's for sure. Yeah.
I got to drop in a movie for those who want to know more or understand more about flow. You can watch the Disney movie called Soul. I'm not sure if you have watched it before. Soul.
I have seen this movie. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
It looks like it was done on quite a limited budget, but it's actually quite a cool.
Yeah.
It's a cool story, a cool theme. Yeah.
Yeah, it is, and it does explain flow a little bit there. I mean, maybe not literally, so but the concept it's around there. So go and check it out if you have some spare time. Yeah.
It sort of reminds me. I did sort of speech a while ago. It's similar related, but around distress and eustress. Have you guys heard of that before?
Positive stress.
Yes.
Eustress. Yep.
No, I have not.
So-
Is that an ACT term?
No, it's an
Psychology
actual
term.
psychology term. It's
Okay.
EU stress.
Okay.
And so, and distress is basically like what we mentioned about fatigue. If you've got too much stress and you're not able to manage it, and you're not able to, let's just say, empty the bottle. So you go with that metaphor, your bottle's full and you can't empty it out. Then it tips over to the distress part.
Right.
So, but eustress, just think of it, and I think of it as this, using stress to motivate yourself. So a bit like flow, but I would say another sort of analogy for is that if you're studying for an exam and or for assignment, and you've got the assignment and it was due this week or a week from now, and rather than doing it, I tend to do it the last day. And I try to do it prior to it, but it's not going to work. But the last day is when I'm actually going to cram, and it's when I'm actually going to do all the work, because it's due that night. It's due in 5 or 6 hours. So I'm going to use that stress. Shoot, it's due 6 hours from now, and that's going to motivate me, and it's going to actually make me do that work. Without that stress, I'm not really going to do it. I'm going to put it off to the side. I'm going to dibby dab it here and there. But there's a lot of people who do actually exceptionally well in that environment. So that's what they call that's an example of sort of use stress. So using that stress to benefit yourself positively. Yeah. So it's bits. There's a bit of
I was going to say, when I catch myself doing that, it's often a form of self-sabotage. That's my awareness on that one.
It's not very sustainable, isn't it? Yeah. But I get the idea that sometimes that kind of stress can really pushes you. But I think the use stress is also can be explained by the stress that you have before a public speaking. That keeps you checking your notes and making sure that you are prepared, so that you can really perform. Yeah. So that's it is that aspect as well. Hey, we've been talking a lot about stresses, burnout, tiredness, fatigueness. I just realized that we haven't actually talked about are there aspect differences in exhaustions and tiredness. You know how we use the health bar and mana bar in game. There's normally two kind of system. You have to take care of your health and your mana. Do you think the same kind of concept apply to our real world life, or do you think there's more than just health and mana or stamina?
And chucking the stamina bar.
Yeah.
Dark Souls.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, it's good to visualize that. It's good to visualize. Oh, where's my mana bar at? And I would let's just say mana bar is more emotional, mental.
Okay. So you're saying that the first two that you identify is emotional and mental kind of aspect of life.
For mana.
Yeah.
And probably more physical is probably more health. And so it's good to externalize it and visualize it. And once you can do that, then you can break it down and you can start addressing your life in that term, in the conceptualized view. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess in the games world, we might refer to those items that charge those bars, the health and stamina or whatever, as resources. And I guess if we think about our own lives in terms of resources, we do have finite resources, unfortunately. We have finite time in a day, we have finite energy, and we have what's the last one? Finite money. So that is a I guess I would say that in order to kind of function optimally or be in flow or whatever, you need to recognize what the maximum point of your health bars are and operate within those limits. Use your time and energy wisely. That's my life lesson anyway.
And what you mentioned, sorry.
No, you go ahead, Simon.
Oh, what you mentioned about the resources, like how to fill them, like having, what are your health potions or mana potions or stamina potions? What's in your toolkit?
Yes. So my resources are I tap into my friendships and my relationships with family and my partner, and which gives me energy, and obviously all the other beautiful things about relationships, different perspectives and connections to things and people I didn't know I was connected to, and sleep. Sleep's really, really big for me. So sleep and rest, and and then all these other things, sort of self-care rituals, I would say, or self-love rituals, like make sure that I'm topping myself up with things that make me feel good, like maybe like a massage every few weeks, or eating my favorite food, or going to the beach is a big one for me, and swimming. So yeah, doing these things that don't just sustain me but also give me joy. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of connection as well. It's either connection to yourself, others, and even literal rest, sleeping.
Yeah.
Or even to the environment.
Yeah,
True.
definitely. Yeah.
And Gorgon, what would be your sort of mana potions and health potion?
Well, the reason I asked that question initially is because I don't think health and mana is enough to cover, like what you say, the full aspect of our exhaustions and tiredness. And as you say, mana bar can represent, or stamina bar can represent emotional and mental. And I would say at times we need to develop our own. I would develop my own bar for each needs. So we talk about the physical exhaustion part of it. That's more related to physical. If I run for 20K, I'll be physically fatigued, physically tired. That's emotional, that's mental, that we have talked about. And I think that's, for myself anyway, there's also this spiritual connection too. And I think that's important aspect in our life. So for physical, the HP, the potions, for me is no brainer. It's really rest, isn't it? Rest, eat, eat in a appropriate kind of way, and sometimes just closing the eyes, not necessarily napping or sleeping. I think that helps me a lot. Yeah. So emotion. I think it also relates to emotional kind of stress and exhaustion as well. Because emotionally, I think I use it for mana. I will use mana to kind of represent the emotion part of it. Because a lot of time, let's say if I'm tired emotionally, kind of sad, that I gonna pay 1,000+ for my tire. That's gonna chip into it very hard, and it's hard to maintain happy. But at the same time, I can't always display the sadness in everyone, especially if I'm working. That's just about there are times that I need to put that aside. So every time when I exercise that kind of exercise, in the sense of putting the sadness aside for now because it's not appropriate for this function, that takes up my mana bar. Yeah. So, but mana bar, and how do I actually add to it, is to experience the emotion. So when I can be with myself or be with my wife, that's where I would express it, to cry it out. Sometimes closing my eyes can help too, in terms of the emotional side of it. And and I think the mental and emotional is very closely related to, because again, if I will need to suppress my emotion for that moment. That takes up mental energy, at least in my own understanding. So again, resting, even playing games, just distract myself from the reality. And I think that's why games or fictional world is such a good escape portal for a lot of people.
Longer for an hour? Longer than an hour, or just for an hour?
just 30 minutes would do.
Still in disbelief over that. 1 hour of gaming. Never more.
I have short attention span.
It should be 2.5 gamers.
Yeah, maybe the next podcast. So mental, again, rest, sleep, those are the remedy. And I think lastly, spiritual aspect as well. And I'm not referring to just religion. I mean, of course, there's other spirituality. How people define spirituality is, according to your own set of belief. But I would say in general, spiritual is really our psychology, the inner psyche, how we feel about ourselves, the connection that we have that is above us, not just us. It can be with your friends, it can be with, in religious term, your own religious being, or even with nature, the universe. So those are the things that make you feel that, hey, I'm alive. So that is maybe some kind of energy and item that I would use as well. For myself, I'm a Christian, so I would just exercise my Christian belief part of things. Yeah. What about you, Simon?
Oh, you guys summed it up quite well. I mean, for me, I guess if I had to find a starting point, because you're right, it's prioritize. You're prioritizing what's important for you, and then you got to understand what is important for you. But obviously, at my age, I've realized what's important for me, and then with that, I've start to prioritize what, like even exercise is good for me, but it's hard to do it substantially. It's hard to do it enough to help. But I know it's good for me, so I just got to push through it. Is that even that grit? Is that I know it's good for my HP, my physical health, and my mana and my stamina, and the sense of anxiety and so forth. It's really, really good, even to points of breathing, helping with my breathing. So it's prioritizing things, even if I don't want to do it, but I know it's good for me. With that, once I start to prioritize things, like we mentioned earlier in this podcast, is that being that self-aware. Why am I so snappy? Okay. And then that, what you mentioned, we mentioned before about relationships. Sometimes I'm not so self-aware that I have to start to listen to my partner, where she's saying, she'll be straight up, but a bit cranky or something. And rather than biting back, no, I'm not, you are. I had to sort of listen to that. Okay, so what if she is right? Okay, maybe I'm a bit cranky, and then going down that path. But there's a lot of things like I do. I know what helps, but I also know that I can easily overstep the boundaries. So I could game, and if I find I like the game of extra time, I'll be a bit obsessed of that video game, and then next thing you know, that's not helping me. I'm actually got worse than I was prior to it. So I find that I need to do those things, and then with limitations, so not to get stuck in it, because I can just easily go down the path where I'm like 8 hours or so forth in the game, and now it's like 3 a.m. or something. So putting those boundaries in health and in a way that I know it's good for me, I know it's helpful for me, is really helpful. So a lot of things like you guys mentioned, sleep. I need good sleep. I'm a light sleeper, so I need 8 hours, but I take a while to go to sleep, and I wake up during the night, so I actually need 9 to 10, because I don't actually get 8 in the 8 hours sleep. And then what I mentioned about exercise, gaming, socializing with my partner, my friends, and prioritizing that is important for you, and you know how helpful it is, so put the value towards it, and spiritual as well. So definitely spiritual as well. Probably falling a bit off the I guess of the spiritual side of things for a time, but going out in nature, going into the beach, lying in the ocean, just listen to the birds, listen to, sometimes I like to bird watch. It's just being still, that helps me be mindful. I can't really be mindful if there's devices around me. So if I go out and
you and every other human on the planet.
But yeah, listen to the ocean, the waves or something at the beach. That just fills my soul. And talking to God and is really something I know it's good for me, but I just put it on the back burner. I'll only do it when I really need to do it. Ideally, it's not. Ideally you can sustain that, so that you don't get to a point where we mentioned before, you hit rock bottom. Yeah. So yes, juggling all those things.
And no wonder we are so tired.
Yeah. I think since you guys have both touched on spirituality, I would say I think that's really, really fundamental and to everyone's health and well-being and growth. And my spirituality is I think is relatively young, and I'm learning and growing my spirituality through connection with people and nature, and that's what it is for me. And I think that without that, alongside all the other things we've just discussed, life is just not as rich. So I just want to put it out there. It's really important, and I think it's really important that you find your own spirituality, as and when you're ready.
Yes. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be this big thing that that everyone is doing. It's what you feel comfortable and you relate to. Start by just noticing.
Check out some cults and see what happens.
Any recommendation there, Alex?
There's a good one that starts with the word science.
I thought
I wouldn't recommend that.
You said sigh, and then I thought, what? Me?
Salmon? But no. No, please don't join a cult. I think it is a good time for us to wrap things up, because we've spoken from what is fatigue, burnout, tiredness, to what causes us to be mindful of what are some of the things that tells our body that we are tired, and then to what can we use to add the HP, the health bar, the mana bar, the potions. And lastly, I would like to say in ACT framework that we have mentioned in the past, it's really committed action. Once you know that you are tired, once you know that, hey, I think I need to do something about it, it's about thinking what's next and commit to it. And if you feel like you are, listener, if you are struggling with this, by all means, call up the helpline in your country. In New Zealand, talk to a counselor, talk to a therapist. It doesn't really, it's not only for people who are having, mental health illness, or it's for everyone. It's a mental health check for all of us. So if you need help, seek out help. Talk to your friends, your family.
Yeah, even friends and so forth. Like even Alex mentioned previously, how friends were really helpful for him.
Yes.
So keep talking to someone, and ideally the people you trust, so they can maybe shine that blind spot, and you can help each other out.
Yeah. Real life is not a game, but it's definitely a multiplayer life. So you don't have to do this alone.
That's a nice one to wrap up on.
Yeah, I thought that as well.
So I guess this is it then.
Yep, that's good. That's good externalization.
Okay, so remember, I'll say it again as a wrap up. We are living in a multiplayer world, so you don't have to do this alone.